Welcome to the World Wire Update White. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. Let's break down tariffs and see what all the fuss is about. A tariff is basically a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. Think of it as a kind of cover charge for foreign products trying to enter the US market. For example, if a Chinese widget costs $1, and the US slaps on a 25% tariff, that widget now costs $1.25 before it even lands on American shelves. That extra quarter goes straight to the government, not the seller. The main idea behind tariffs is to make imported goods more expensive, so American-made products look like a better deal. It's a way to nudge shoppers toward buying local, supporting domestic businesses and workers. Under the Trump administration, tariffs became the go-to tool for trade policy, especially against countries like China. Sweeping new taxes were imposed on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods. The goal was to fix trade deficits, punish what were seen as unfair trade practices, and bring manufacturing jobs back to the US heartland. It was a bold, confrontational approach. But starting a trade fight is never simple. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs, sparking a tit-for-tat cycle that quickly escalated into a full-blown trade war, with headlines around the world. Suddenly, global trade felt like a high-stakes poker game, with billions of dollars and countless products caught in the crossfire. Businesses, farmers, and consumers all felt the impact. The administration used a sledgehammer approach, often citing national emergencies to justify broad, sweeping tariffs that affected entire industries. This marked a dramatic shift from previous presidents, who usually preferred slow, careful negotiations and incremental deals to resolve trade disputes. Instead, the new strategy was to hit first and ask questions later, a move that quickly landed the whole mess in front of the Supreme Court, raising big constitutional questions. In just a few years, tariffs went from being an obscure policy tool to the center of a constitutional showdown, changing the way America does business with the world. So how did tariffs end up in court? The answer lies in the ripple effects these tariffs had across the country, sparking outrage and confusion among those most affected. Businesses and states, squeezed by higher costs, challenged the president's authority. For many, the sudden spike in expenses threatened their survival, forcing them to make tough decisions about layoffs, price hikes, or even shutting down. Imagine you run a company relying on imported steel. Suddenly your costs skyrocket, and you're forced to raise prices or cut jobs. The uncertainty rippled through entire communities, affecting not just businesses but workers and families who depended on those jobs. Thousands of businesses in several states sued, arguing the president overstepped, since the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to tax and regulate trade. Their lawsuits claimed the executive branch was taking powers never meant to be in its hands. The administration cited the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, a 1977 law meant for national emergencies. They argued this law gave the president the flexibility to act quickly in times of crisis, even if it meant bypassing Congress. But critics said trade deficits aren't emergencies, and IEPA wasn't meant to let the president create a nationwide tax system. They warned that using emergency powers for economic policy set a dangerous precedent, blurring the lines between branches of government. Lower courts sided with the businesses, calling the tariffs an overreach. Judges emphasized the importance of checks and balances and the need to keep presidential power in check. The case climbed to the Supreme Court, setting up a battle over the limits of presidential power. The nation watched closely, knowing the outcome could reshape how economic decisions are made for years to come. The government argued the president needs broad authority in emergencies, but opponents warned this was a dangerous expansion. The debate became a test of the Constitution itself, pitting national security against democratic oversight. This wasn't just about tariffs anymore. It was about who really controls America's economic policy and whether the balance of power would shift for generations to come. The Supreme Court took center stage, weighing whether IEPA lets the president impose sweeping tariffs by declaring a trade emergency. After months of debate, the court ruled 6-3 against the administration. The majority said Congress, not the president, holds the power to tax, and IEPA doesn't grant authority for broad nationwide tariffs. Allowing otherwise, they warned, would let the president bypass Congress and create taxes by decree. The dissenters argued for more deference to the executive, but the majority's message was clear: the Constitution draws a line. The Trump-era tariffs, at least those justified under IEPA, were struck down as unconstitutional. The decision dismantled a key pillar of the administration's trade strategy. The gavel fell, and the rules of presidential power changed. This ruling is about more than tariffs. It's about the balance of power. For years, presidents have pushed the limits of executive authority. The court just pushed back. Congress, not the president, is now firmly in charge of economic policy, especially taxes and trade. The decision means future presidents can't unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs without Congress. Now, the administration is pivoting to an older law, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, to justify tariffs on national security grounds. Courts have been reluctant to challenge national security tariffs, so this fight isn't over. But the ruling could force Congress to re-engage on trade, reclaiming powers it's long ceded. It's a reminder friction between branches is a safeguard, not a flaw. The tariffs weren't just a legal debate, they hit real countries and products. China was the main target, but tariffs spread to goods from nearly every country, with rates up to 50%. Everyday items, washing machines, steel, aluminum, electronics, got more expensive. Even allies like Canada, Mexico, and India faced steep tariffs, straining relationships. The administration linked some tariffs to issues like drug trafficking and immigration, using trade as leverage. The list of affected products was massive, from raw materials to high-tech goods. Businesses with global supply chains were thrown into chaos, forced to rethink everything overnight. Retaliation was swift. China taxed U.S. soybeans. The EU targeted American bourbon and motorcycles. The result? A messy trade war where everyone, including American consumers and businesses, paid the price. It wasn't a surgical strike, it was a global brawl. What did tariffs mean for regular people? For most of us, tariffs aren't just an abstract policy, they show up in our daily lives, often in ways we don't expect. Higher prices, plain and simple. Everyday essentials, from groceries to gadgets, started costing more. Importers pay the tax but pass the cost to you, so TVs, shoes, and appliances all got pricier. Even products made in America often use imported parts, so their prices climbed too. The administration claimed tariffs would protect American jobs, especially in manufacturing. The idea was to give U.S. factories a fighting chance against foreign competition. In a few sectors, some jobs were saved. Steel and aluminum workers, for example, saw a temporary boost. But for most, the story was different. Many companies faced higher costs, which led to layoffs or hiring freezes. More Americans work in industries that use imported goods than make them, so higher costs hurt far more workers than they helped. From auto parts to retail, the ripple effects were widespread. Some businesses thrived, but many faced layoffs and stalled growth. Small businesses in particular struggled to absorb the extra expenses. Most studies found tariffs raised prices, triggered retaliation, and created uncertainty, hurting more than they helped. Trade partners responded with their own tariffs, making it harder for American exporters. The short-term gains in a few industries were outweighed by long-term costs. Entire communities felt the impact as factories closed or moved operations overseas. Tariffs brought in revenue, but acted as a tax on American businesses and consumers. The extra money collected didn't offset the broader economic pain. The intended boost to the economy ended up as a drag, leaving many Americans paying more and feeling less secure about their jobs and futures. With the Supreme Court's decision, the broad IEEPA tariffs are gone, but don't expect instant change. Prices won't drop overnight, supply chains and pricing take time to adjust. Still, businesses that rely on imports are breathing easier, and consumers should see some relief soon. The administration is now leaning on Section 232, using national security as justification for new, targeted tariffs. Courts rarely challenge these, so the trade war may just shift focus. Congress now has a chance, and a responsibility, to reclaim its role in trade policy. Will lawmakers step up, or keep deferring to the White House? That will shape America's economic future. The Supreme Court's ruling is a landmark, reining in presidential power and clarifying the rules. But the debate over tariffs and trade is far from over. The president can't single-handedly rewrite trade rules anymore, and that's a big deal.